Jeff Serber, Operations Section Chief with Great Basin Team 1 with the day's plan for today. What we starting over again on the I-70 corridor and the no-name drainage. You'll see that today we have some containment line on the map. We're feeling comfortable that that fire in that drainage will not escape. So we went ahead and show that as contained. As we get up farther into the drainage towards Windy Point is right here. This area has not had boots on the ground because of the difficult terrain. We did get crews up into here, and that's why we feel more comfortable turning that black. They were able to turn on pumps, spray water, put out the edge of the fire where that's not going to happen up in here because of the terrain. Over in both No Name and Grizzly yesterday, there was very minimal growth. Comparison of the infrared flights we have from one day ago to last night show very little growth in this area yesterday. Pretty good weather conditions until the afternoon. Then we got winds, but we also had some rain showers, and the winds didn't seem to affect the fire growth out here in these two drainages yesterday. We've completed line. You can see dozer line out here from the Dead Horse drainage over to Grizzly. That's kind of a contingency line in the event this escapes, but you can also see line along the edge. So we're pretty much all the way from Coffee Pot Spike over here to Grizzly. We are going direct on the fire. We have folks on the ground that are walking these edges and putting them out because it, as I talked about before, it ran up through the vegetation, the heavier vegetation, then hit the flatter ground with lighter fuels, and it kind of started to go out on its own. So now we're able to go along, walk the edge, and use helicopters in some cases. Other cases we can just do what's called dry mopping, where we mix dirt and into any duff layer, anything that's smoldering, and kill it with dirt or engines when we can drive the engines out into those areas sometimes along dozer lines, sometimes along roads. Over on from Coffee Pot Spike, Coffee Pot Spring is where Coffee Pot Spike is, and from that area all the way back around to I-70, we have not called that entire area contained yet, but you'll see black line on the map today around the perimeter working their way towards Coffee Pot. Feeling comfortable that the fire will not advance to the east along what was that problem area a few days ago. A lot of work in there. This lower portion was never, because of the terrain, I've inspected it from the air several times, and our IR continues to show, our infrared flights continue to show that there's no heat in there, so we went ahead and called that contained up. This area right here on the map was kind of like a little bit of a mapping area that should have been black in there, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. And then you'll see going towards Coffee Pot Spike, where we don't quite feel comfortable enough to turn that black yet, but that will turn black, at least I hope it turns black in the next few days. I don't see necessarily any problems in this area as far as eventual containment. It's just that we're not quite ready to call that contained yet. Crossing over I-70 near Bear Ranch, we have a line all the way up around the Bear Ranch improvements, the lower Bear Ranch improvements. Yesterday there was a burnout operation initiated probably around 10 o'clock in the morning along a road system that was already there, and it goes up onto what the crews anyway are calling Ike Ridge. That's not really the name of it. You have Ike Canyon and you have Spruce Creek over here, and they've just kind of started calling that Ike Ridge, but it's a major ridge between those two drainages. The upper portion of Spruce Creek is tied in pretty good from this burnout right here. You can see on the top of Spruce Ridge, they came down off the ridge. There's line down through this area all the way back over to where they were burning yesterday, to the top of the ridge about 11:30 yesterday. When they were burning, they decided to stop the operation because they started to get downdrafts out of the thunderstorms that were headed in our way. So they stopped, and you can kind of see the perimeter. The fire stops right there where they quit burning, and they wanted to get around that corner and all the way back over to an existing line. Probably another half a mile of line needs to be burned out in there to secure everything from I-70 all the way to the top of Spruce Ridge. So We have a little bit more work in there just to complete taking out the green fuel that's between the main fire and the containment line, and then we'll feel comfortable that this area is pretty well protected from that fire moving on out to the east northeast. So that could be accomplished today as long as the conditions are right and not too much rain was received in there yesterday as far as trying to light that fire. I don't believe that there was enough rain in there to prevent us from burning it, but we'll have to assess that this morning. Moving on around to our Division Zulu, that's this whole top portion, Green Lake area over to Dock Flats and then over to Spruce Ridge. This is real spotty burn. There is a possibility that we may, depending on the weather conditions, eventually burn out some green fuel between the dozer line and the fire to make sure that as spruce and fir and things that flare up every so often don't throw embers across the line. Sometimes we'll take out the fuel between our line and the fire to make sure there's more of a buffer in there. Right now there isn't a lot of buffer, and you can see places like this where there's a spot fire. We just don't want to basically babysit that thing forever, waiting to see if this gets bigger and see if anything sneaks out here. And there's 3 or 4 miles of line right in this one small area, or we have 3/4 of a mile of dozer line there that if we initiated a burn, we could put a buffer in there and then it wouldn't really matter what happened in here. And it's easier to walk away from something like that and allow it to smolder when you know that you've got a good secure line. So we may do that depending on the weather conditions. We might initiate a little bit of burn up in here just to secure that perimeter. Moving into Division Alpha from the Lookout area, Lookout Park area, back down into the I-70 corridor. They continue to drop a lot of retardant in there from the retardant plant down here on the highway. They'll do that again today in support of a operation that we have going with heavy equipment in there to go downhill along that fire edge with feller bunchers and dozers and whatever other types of equipment and crews we need to continue out to the west and down to where it gets too steep to work. So the area between I-70 and the top where it's straight up and down, obviously we won't get in that, but we've all been looking at that for a week and nobody's seen any smoke on that anymore. So we'll continue to monitor it, but the line building will take place on the more moderate area of that division where we can actually use equipment and people. Again, we have initial attack resources and structure protection resources ready to go either direction into a initial attack area that we were assigned as part of this fire. Yesterday on the Red Canyon fire, it was able to, even though we had 40 to 50 people over there continuing out to look at that fire and walk around it, it was able to come out on the northwest corner and add about 10 acres to that fire. We put 2 helicopters on it. It still was resistant to control, so we ordered 2 more. So there was a total of 4 helicopters that worked that spot. We had folks right there when it took off that called for helicopters immediately. The helicopters were, because it's in the oak brush, it pops up so fast and it gets so intense that the folks have to back off. Even though they know it's there, they can't really get in close enough to fight it until the helicopters come in and douse it, knock down the flames, cool it off enough that the folks can get right up against the edge of it. We sent a dozer over, put dozer line around the entire thing. And there were folks out there last night. There'll be people out there again today. They'll continue to monitor that fire to make sure it doesn't escape again. And that's the end of the report for today. Thank you.